Hi everybody, Fearin here. You're welcome for that nice little piece of comic relief. I just had to sit down and watch a Markiplier video because I was a little pissed off because I tried turning the resolution up like I said I would, and right in the middle of the video I kind of got off tangent on this rant about Jim Bowie, or not a rant, just a, kind of a lesson. And I forgot somebody's name, and I still can't remember it, which is pissing me off, but I'm not going to get into it because I noticed when I turned the resolution up, everything kind of started lagging in the video, and I thought it was just the video. Well, then I got off, or I didn't get off, I minimized the video and went to the internet to try to look up this person's name. I'm sure I'll remember it eventually. I can't believe I've forgotten it, but the computer crashed. I mean, it literally just completely shut off of its own accord, and I had to turn it back on, and then it wouldn't hardly work right for a few minutes, and then the camera wouldn't come on, and then a lot of crap happened. Finally, I was just like, screw it, I need to get a little distance here. But we're back now. We're back, and I can continue. So anyway, to pick up, well, not pick up where I left off because I got to reintroduce all this, but this is Ridge Runner's Arkansas toothpick, or not Arkansas toothpick, Montana toothpick. I'm not sure. They call it that, I guess, because this is a type of knife that was used in Montana. I wouldn't guarantee that. I think they probably just picked that name because it sounded interesting. But, it's stainless steel. I'm not a big fan of that in any kind of blade, although knives, it's not a big problem with. It's just stainless steel is, yeah, it won't rust, or it's very, very difficult to rust, but it's also, the steel itself is extremely hard. Well, in some cases it's hard, in some cases it can be soft. I once had a Celtic-style war sword I bought from Bud K. That is the last sword I will ever buy from Bud K that is made by them, because it was 440 stainless steel, the blade was, or maybe it was AUS 6, I can't remember, but it was stainless steel. And when I first got it out of the box, I was really impressed. I really liked it. I swung it around a little bit, and then the box was this big, tall cardboard box, and I had my dad stand it up, and I took a swing at it. It didn't cut the box, and it actually dented the edge of my blade on cardboard. I need to take my glasses off so that you can understand the expression on my face right now. Cardboard dented my blade. Basically, stainless steel is not heat-treated the way it needs to be for a sword. From what I've read, it is basically, it's really hard, which means that it can be very sharp. You can sharpen it to be pretty damn sharp if it's of the right quality, but it also means that it is very brittle. It can break easily. And that is actually better quality stainless steel for like a knife blade or something, because you want it to be able to be sharp. I think, honestly, because it didn't chip the blade of my sword, it dented it. It literally, there was a dent, a little dimple in the edge of the blade where it had bent it inwards. I no longer have the sword, obviously. I did keep it for a while, but then I lost it along the way, and I honestly don't miss it. It was not a very well-made sword. It was extremely uncomfortable in the hand. It was a wall hanger. It was just there to look interesting, and it didn't even really look all that good. But, so stainless steel for a sword blade is a no-no. It's not going to work. It just isn't. Stainless steel is not good for a sword blade. It needs to be carbon steel, even if it's of a lower quality carbon steel, which carbon steel can range in variations from like 1050, I think, or 1040, I think, is the lowest carbon count I've ever run across in a sword. And then I want to say that the highest I ever ran across was like 6150, which that's like real high quality. That's like the best you can get. But anyway, about this. My dad initially bought it for himself. He wanted it. Sorry, I forgot to cover the microphone on that one. But he wasn't satisfied with it. He wanted it because he liked the look of it and that it was a smaller Bowie knife. But he didn't particularly like it once he got it. It's a good knife. To be honest, he's picky about this sort of thing. The only thing I could run across that he disliked about it was there is a tiny, infinitesimal gap, I think I said that right, between the scale and the tang. You might can see it. It's right here. I literally can just barely fit my fingernail into it, but he didn't like that. This is also an interesting opportunity for me to discuss full tang. Some people, and I was bad about it myself, get the impression in their minds that full tang simply means that that the knife or the sword, whatever it is, has a full tang. The tang reaches that the tang, which is the back part of which is the part of the blade that fits into the hilt, it simply runs from point to pommel. That is incorrect. Basically, if you want a weapon that is structurally sound, you're going to have that. Full tang is this. It's where the hilt is made in such a way that you can visibly see the tang between the scales of the grip. So that is full tang. You can see where it broadens out down here in the little ricasso, and it just continues right past the guard and into the hilt, and it's shaped to fit the hilt. The weapon is very comfortable, it's very light, it would be a really good quick little slicer in a fight, and very good at the thrust because it is very, very narrow, the blade is. As you can see, it's quite narrow. And being narrow and slender, it would be pretty good in the thrust. One thing I actually do kind of like about it is how the pommel kind of extends, or the grip. There really is no pommel on this. This is not even what you would call a pommel. It's just the grip extends down like this, which kind of gives the impression of having a pommel, but it doesn't have one. One way you can tell it doesn't have a pommel is the balance. It's basically, you don't even notice it in a weapon this small and light, but the balance in this thing is actually... I mean, I'm not 100% sure on balance for knives, how you should judge it, because balance, you can actually kind of see the gap right there. Oh yeah, you can definitely see it right there. If I tip it like that, you can see how you can see light kind of shining between the tang and the scale. But anyway, balance, there's no such thing necessarily as an unbalanced blade. I mean, if you've got a rapier and the point of balance is like 8 or 9 inches in front of your hand, that is unbalanced. That's a poorly made blade. 1 second again, guys. But if, for instance, you're talking about like a Viking sword or a Migration era sword, a Dark Ages sword that has that kind of point of balance where it's like 6 to 8 inches in front of the guard, that's perfectly fine. That kind of sword is supposed to have that kind of balance because it's not made for really good point control. It's made for wide sweeping slashes out from behind a shield. You don't have to have really good recovery time with it because you've got the shield there to protect yourself. Whereas a rapier needs excellent recovery time because, for one thing, it's a point-centric weapon. It's made to thrust, not to cut. So you need to be able to have really good point control over your weapon, so that with just a slight flick of a wrist, you can change the point where it's pointing. And you need to be able to recover quickly from any movement that you make. But with a knife, I'm not entirely certain. Honestly, balance doesn't really seem to be an issue. I mean, I have had a knife before that was really front-end heavy, but it was a big knife. Basically, it was actually kind of a cheap Bud K. I don't have anything against Bud K in general. They're not a bad company. They do sell a lot of cool stuff. I do own a lot of their stuff. And their knives aren't bad. Most of them. This one was their replica of the Bowie knife from 2004 Alamo with Billy Bob Thornton and Patrick Wilson and Jason Patrick and all those guys. And it was huge. This thing was like 18 inches long. I think this thing is just like 13 inches. So you can imagine if this is 13 inches, that thing was like this long, and the blade was like that wide. I'm not joking about that either. It was literally about 4 inches wide at its widest point, and it had a brass. I don't even think there's a name for it. It's just a shield that runs down the back. I think it was designed not so much for strength as it was you could parry with it. And if you did, because the brass is slick and smooth, it'll channel that blade straight down, and the guard on it actually had a real sharp curl up at the back right in here. It wasn't that big, but it curled up real sharp. It didn't just have the general S-shaped curve. It literally, the front one just kind of came out almost straight like this, while the back one went straight up. So if you parried or deflected with the back of it and the blade slid down, it would get caught in there, and then you could twist the blade and trap it or break it off. It was very point heavy, but there was an obvious reason for that. It was big, and actually it wasn't really point heavy because the blade was literally just like a meat cleaver. It didn't really taper at all. It stayed that wide. It started here, and the back was straight, and then right here you had a big finger groove, but it just dropped down with the finger groove, and then it just went straight out. And this part of the blade was almost straight. It would just come up like this, and then it had this really sharp upsweep at the top. It was a nice knife, to be honest. I actually liked it a lot. I liked the way it looked and felt in the hand. It was not a bad knife. It was pretty cool. I may even get another one at some point. It wasn't that expensive. But this is the Montana toothpick, and in a fight this would be really fast. It's more of a utility knife, I think, because it's kind of small, it's lightweight, it's more of like something you would use if you needed to whittle on something or cut rope, like a very light camp knife. Although at the same time, one might also argue it's nowhere near strong enough to be a true camp knife. That's why I said a light camp knife. Like if you needed to cut a piece of rope or something like that, this would be fine. If you needed to like trim a sapling or just in general whittle on something, this would be great. But it would be good as a fighter because it's very light and very flexible. As far as sharpness goes, it's okay. I wouldn't call it super sharp. I'm actually running my finger across it right now pretty vigorously, and it's not getting cut. I wouldn't want to actually do like a draw or push cut with this thing, because that would probably cut, because there is an edge. It's not a very fine edge, but it's an edge. It would cut you, but only with like a draw or push cut, and you would have to hit pretty hard to actually make a deep cut. Basically, with this thing, I would use it primarily to stab with. I might even use it primarily in an ice pick grip like this, because that would be, because of how slender the blade is, and it does have a fairly sturdy and strong point that is very sharp. That would be your best bet for actually doing damage in a fight with this, would be, to just stab with it. Also, another thing to point out is the difference between a thrust and a stab. A thrust is where you're holding the weapon like this, and you lunge with it, thrust out with it. A stab is like this, where you're holding it like this, and you stab downwards into your opponent. That is the difference between those. So that's actually basically all I have to say about this. I probably won't even do a video demonstrating techniques with this one, simply because I've already talked about all I can about how you would use this in a fight. So, I mean, there are other techniques, you could use it similar to, because you would primarily be carrying it like this, you could use it similar to how they train with a rondelle in HEMA, although it's nowhere near long enough. But you could use it to, like, grapple with. You could, hook limbs with it and do things like that. And that could actually be also a very good non-lethal alternative if you were using this, because it has that blunted spine and even the false edge, which is actually kind of a bummer to me. The false edge on this, technically, Bowie always had his sharpened on any knife he made. And I will do a video, by the way, on the talk I was doing in the other video that broke about Bowie, because he's one of my favorite characters from early American history. But I'll save that for later. But it should be sharpened, because it should be able to give a back cut with that. But it's not. But it doesn't matter, because you can use it to block with, that, or you can also use it, like I said, in like a non-lethal, non-injurious fashion to grapple with. You can hook somebody's limb or wrist like this and pull it out of the way, and so on with it without hurting them too badly. I mean, you'll hurt them, but you won't cut them because it's blunt. But yeah, so that's it for this video, and I will see you all in the next one.